Marcus Hayes eased his sedan into the familiar curve of Oakwood Drive just after dusk, the streetlights flickering on one by one like watchful sentinels. He had spent the evening at a friend's birthday dinner, losing himself in laughter and stories. And now the day's exhaustion settled into his bones as he turned onto the narrow driveway leading to number 213, his home for the past 2 years. The house wore its late summer shadows proudly. The front porch wrapped in ivy, a creaky rocking chair still turning from the morning breeze, and the white picket gate slightly ajar as though whispering a welcome. He killed the engine and sat for a moment, his hand on the steering wheel, breathing in the quiet of the neighborhood. Then he reached for his keys, an old silver ring on his finger catching the glow of the dashboard light. He stepped onto the damp concrete, the scent of rain on asphalt mingling with the faint perfume of honeysuckle climbing the fence. His mind drifted to the voicemail he had left earlier that afternoon for his landlord, Mr. Whitaker, requesting a minor plumbing repair. Nothing urgent, but still something he'd hoped would be addressed before the winter chill settled in. Approaching the porch, Marcus's brow furrowed. The door, always left slightly cracked to welcome the evening breeze, was shut tight, the deadbolt gleaming in the porch's amber glow. He jiggled the handle. It held fast. Puzzled, he swept his gaze down the drive. Mr. Whitaker's navy SUV still sat half-parked beside the garage, its headlights dimmed but unmistakable under the oak trees. The SUV's driver's side mirror bore the faint imprint of a business logo, Whitaker Property Management, evidence that his landlord was home. Strange, Marcus muttered, fingering the entry key. He tried it in the lock. No click, still secured against the night. He tried the secondary key ring, identical outcome. His pulse quickened with confusion and a tinge of frustration. Permission to enter had always been tacit. Mr. Whitaker had once let himself in unannounced to change a light bulb. But tonight? Silence. He pulled out his phone to call Mr. Whitaker. Each ring stretched the quiet into a cavern of unanswered expectation, straight to voicemail. He left a concise message. Mr. Whitaker, I'm locked out and your car's in the driveway. Please call me or let me in. He hung up and pocketed the phone, pacing under the porch light, the ivy rustling softly above his head. Marcus circled to the back gate, hoping for a side entrance left ajar. The wooden slats, however, were painted shut, the latch unyielding. He tried the Ring doorbell's intercom, another feature Mr. Whitaker had installed weeks ago, but pressing the button yielded only the faint chirp of low battery and no chime inside. With a sigh, Marcus leaned against the porch railing and peered through the narrow gap beside the storm door window. Inside, the living room lay still, the sofa cushions plumped, a solitary throw pillow unmoved, and the television dark. In the foyer, the hallway light stood off, unlit, though the switch just inside still protruded in the on position. He checked his watch. 8:47 p.m. His roommates were away on business trips. He was alone in this locked shell. A restless tension spooled in his chest. He exhaled and reached for the Ring app on his phone to view the live feed. The thumbnail image showed the empty porch, except for one curious detail. A shadow moving behind the front window's lace curtain. Just a flicker. He tapped the screen to enlarge the feed. The video stuttered, then smoothed into real-time motion. There, beyond the glass, a figure in a dark jacket crouched in the living room's corner, their back to the door. The low lamplight revealed only a silhouette curling around something small and rectangular. Marcus's breath caught. Whoever it was, they were clearly not Mr. Whitaker in his business attire. They were wearing jeans and carrying a toolbox at their side. His pulse raced as he watched the figure slip something unseen into a battered metal case by the bookshelf. The figure paused, head tilting as though listening. Then, moving with practiced silence, they rose and crept toward the hallway, out of the camera's view. Marcus's mind spun. Why was someone inside his home? Was his landlord doing repairs after all, without bothering to knock? Or was something more sinister at play? Clutching his phone, Marcus took a steadying breath. The locked door, Mr. Whitaker's SUV, and now this mysterious intruder all fit together in a puzzle he had no intention of ignoring. Tonight, he realized, he was not simply locked out of his own home. He was a witness to a secret unfolding in the very heart of his sanctuary. And in that quiet moment beneath the ivy-clad porch, Marcus Hayes understood that retrieving his keys would have to wait until he discovered what the landlord was hiding behind those darkened walls. Marcus's knuckles rapped against the wooden door. With growing urgency, each rap echoing in the stillness around him. He backed away, reached into his pocket, and fished out his phone, a lifeline in this strange standoff. His thumb hovered over the contacts list. Mr. Whitaker, marked with a little wrench icon next to his name, then his own roommate Sam, whose flight from Seattle wouldn't land until dawn. Then 911, always the last resort. He tapped Mr. Whitaker first. 4 rings. No answer. He tried again. 4 more. The call went to voicemail. "Leave a message," the automated voice instructed. Marcus closed his eyes and swallowed. "Eric, Marcus here at 213 Oakwood. I'm locked out in your home. Please call me back or let me in." His voice caught on the last words. He ended the call and stared at the screen, the last call timestamp glowing in the dim porch light. He paced the length of the driveway, eyeing that navy SUV half-parked at a jaunty angle. Its brake lights were off, but the engine block sat warm from earlier. If Mr. Whitaker had intended to fix the leaky faucet, he must have come after work hours, yet somehow he'd found time to vanish from his own property. Next, Marcus dialed Sam. No answer. He left a terse text. "Locked out. Can you FaceTime? Need help. Urgent." Then he tried 911. The automated dispatcher asked for his location, already filled in from GPS, and he hesitated. Was this a true emergency? His voice shook as he tapped send. He leaned back against the porch railing, sliding down until he sat on the bottom step, the night breeze stirring the honeysuckle. The only reply was the distant hum of traffic and the rustle of leaves. He pressed his forehead to his palms, trying to steady his breath. In the silence, every shadow seemed to shift, an imagined presence slipping just out of sight. Determined, Marcus retraced his steps, back to the driveway where he tested the garage keypad code, 4231, the number Sam always complained about forgetting. Nothing. He glanced into the small side window beside the door. Frosted glass obscured any clear view of the inside, but he thought he saw the faint silhouette of furniture. No glimmer of movement. He toggled his phone's flashlight and swept its beam across the ivy-clad siding and the basement hatch beside the porch. His keyring jingled as he unlocked the small metal padlock, a relic from the previous tenant. But the hatch refused to budge. Frustration turned to dread. Every potential entry point was sealed. Marcus returned to the front door and pressed his ear to the cool wood, listening. No footfalls on hardwood floors, no muffled voices, no hum of power tools, only the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat. He straightened and tapped his phone screen to review the Ring app's last recorded motion alert. 8:45 p.m., a minute before he arrived. Motion in the hallway, but no name attached. No audio. The night pressed in around him, and as he stared down at his locked home, Marcus realized something unsettling. If even a desperate call for help was met with silence, then whatever was happening inside was being hidden and protected by an impenetrable quiet. And in that gathering hush, he vowed he would discover the secret Mr. Whitaker had buried behind his own front door. Marcus sat on the bottom step of his porch, the chill of the night seeping through his jeans, fingers gripping his phone as he replayed the latest Ring alert for the 10th time. The timestamp glowed 8:45 p.m., only moments before he'd arrived home. In the grainy infrared footage, 2 shadowy figures emerged at the far edge of his yard, beyond the ivy-clad fence. They moved with a deliberate slowness, as though testing each creak of the old gate, one trailing a bulky duffel bag, the other scanning the darkness with a low-beam flashlight. He paused the video and leaned forward, squinting through the small screen. The taller figure's shoulders were broad, the hood of their sweatshirt pulled low, and the beam of their flashlight traced a path across the wet concrete. The second figure stooped to unlatch the wrought iron gate latch, an action that Marcus had always done himself without thinking. The gate swung open with an ominous groan, and the pair slipped inside, their forms swallowed by the porch light's halo. Marcus's breath caught. He tapped back to live view, but the camera's lens only showed the empty porch. No figures, no hint of movement. The silence pressed in on him as heavily as the locked door. He scrolled back through the Ring timeline. 8:46 p.m. motion detected in the hallway. 8:47 p.m. interior camera off. He'd disabled it months ago to save power. Then nothing. The footage suggested someone had entered while leaving no physical trace. No unlocked door, no broken lock, only the yawning gate. He rewound to the moment the duo appeared and tapped to enlarge the image. Now he could make out the glint of metal in the duffel bag's zipper and the way the light reflected off scuffed sneakers as they stepped onto the porch. Their stride was careful, practiced, as though they knew the layout. One glanced upward toward the ring camera, his, and gave an almost imperceptible nod, as if acknowledging the lens before they ascended the steps two at a time. Marcus's heart pounded so loudly he thought it might drown out the distant hum of the street lamp. He wondered if the intruders were here to fix his leaking faucet after all, or if they'd come for something darker. He replayed the clip again, this time freezing on the longer silhouette draped in dark nylon, chest moving with controlled breaths. His lips parted in disbelief. The person's profile had a familiar slouch. Could it be Whitaker himself, undercutting his own tenant? Adrenaline surged, and Marcus rose, phone still in hand, stepping off the porch into the dewy grass. He pressed the live view button and scanned the yard with his flashlight, now the only source of illumination beyond the porch lamp. The gate's latch was swinging, the ground beneath sprinkled with fresh mud. He crouched to inspect footprints, two distinct treads, one larger and deeper, the other scuffed fine. Both led toward the side door, locked tight, and then vanished into the shadows of the adjacent garage. Breathing heavily, Marcus realized that the camera had not only captured trespassers, but had recorded them carrying something into his home. He tapped the screen to save the clip and message it to himself. Ring footage, 8:45 p.m., two intruders entering through gate. Clenching his jaw, he understood that this was no casual oversight by a careless landlord. It was a calculated breach. Tonight, those figures had slipped through his only barrier, the gate he thought kept him safe. And now, armed with the Ring camera's unblinking eye, Marcus knew he had to uncover the truth of what they'd taken, before he too was locked out of any path to answers. The next morning, Marcus Hayes awoke to the relentless buzz of his phone, alarm, and a second, more urgent ping that shot a jolt of adrenaline through him. As he rubbed sleep from his eyes, he noticed an unread email from Ring Alerts with the subject line, "Motion detected interior camera." His pulse quickened. He hadn't enabled the interior feed in months, convinced there was nothing inside to record. He tapped the notification and held his breath as the clip loaded. The video began in darkness. For a heartbeat, the cramped living room silhouette was empty. Then, just after the timestamp flicked to 8:47 p.m., the front door camera panned inward and revealed the lanky shape of Mr. Whitaker slipping through the side entry. Marcus watched, stomach twisting, as the landlord's usual blue blazer was replaced by a heavy black coat, the collar turned up against the chill. Whitaker paused in the hall, as if sniffing the air, then moved toward the dining room doorway. Thanks to a stray beam of headlights through the window, Marcus caught sight of the glint of something metallic in Whitaker's hand. An ordinary-looking brass key, but one that didn't fit any lock Marcus knew. The landlord knelt beside the baseboard, found a small latch and turned it. With a muffled click, a section of the wall panel swung open, revealing a narrow wooden ladder leading into the darkness above. Whitaker's breath came in quiet, controlled gasps as he climbed. Marcus's heart pounded as the camera, mounted just below the dining room ceiling, captured Whitaker's heavy boots thudding on the attic joists. Faintly audible, above the mechanical hum of the Ring's sensor, was the landlord's hushed mutter, "As you said, Spencer, no witnesses." The name Spencer sent a chill through Marcus. No tenant named Spencer had ever lived here. Halfway up, Whitaker paused, reached into his inner coat pocket, and withdrew a slender flashlight. He clicked it on and swept its beam across the attic floor. The camera feed shuddered as he moved directly overhead, dust motes dancing in the beam, then caught the corner of a large wooden chest stained dark with age. Whitaker shone the light on the chest's iron clasps, knelt, and undid them one by one. Marcus watched, transfixed and horrified, as Whitaker lifted the chest lid and the beam fell on its contents. Inside lay dozens of small weathered boxes, each tied with frayed twine. He reached in and picked up one box, unlaced the string, and pried it open. The camera angle shifted to show Marcus exactly what was inside, a collection of old black and white photographs, pictures of former tenants, some smiling, some looking anxious, with their names scribbled in Whitaker's precise script on the back. Under the photos lay envelopes bulging with what looked like worn jewelry, wedding rings, and heirloom pocket watches, all clearly marked with occupant names and apartment numbers. Whitaker, voice barely a whisper, said, "Property of Spencer. Forever safe." He slipped the photo and jewelry back in, snapped the box shut, and moved to the next. The attic was lined with row after row of identical boxes, each one representing a past tenant. The sheer volume made Marcus's stomach churn. How many lives had Whitaker cataloged and spied upon in this secret archive? Just then, Whitaker's flashlight beam swung toward the camera. He stood abruptly, a dark silhouette framed by the attic opening. He reached up and peered down into the lens, eyes narrowed. For a single second, Marcus saw recognition in that glare. Then Whitaker ducked out of frame and closed the hatch behind him with a quiet thud. The panel swung shut, and the clip ended, leaving Marcus staring at a blank screen. He sat frozen, the morning sun failing to warm the pit in his stomach. The landlord he'd trusted had been systematically gathering remnants of every tenant's life, snapping secret photographs, confiscating personal treasures, and stashing them in a hidden attic vault. But why? Spying? Blackmail? Keeping trophies? Each possibility was more sickening than the last. Marcus rewatched the clip on loop, noting every detail. The latch location, the ladder's worn rungs, the exact size of the chest. He screenshot still frames, Whitaker's face peering down the pile of tied boxes, and saved them in a folder labeled Whitaker Attic Evidence. His hands trembled as he drafted an email to himself, forwarding the video link with the subject Landlords. Secret stash, urgent. As he clicked send, Marcus realized he had become more than a locked-out tenant. He was a witness to a predatory voyeur who had weaponized trust and property rights against every person who ever inhabited this home. And now, armed with the damning footage in his inbox, Marcus knew he had to confront the truth, and the man who had violated it, before any more secrets could be buried in that hidden attic. By dusk, Marcus had wrung every friend he knew, daring one of them to join him in a stakeout of 213 Oakwood, but no one was free on short notice. Left alone with his mounting dread, he resolved to confront the attic himself. He retrieved a folding ladder from his garage, carried it around the side of the house, and wedged it beneath the basement hatch he'd discovered the night before. He secured the ladder's feet on the uneven concrete, tested its weight, and climbed into the narrow cavity above, careful not to disturb the stray spiderwebs overhead. Once inside the attic's low-ceilinged crawl space, the stale air felt fetid against his face. He flipped on his flashlight, illuminating countless timber beams and rows of dusty twine-bound boxes, just as he'd seen on the video. But tonight he needed more than cursory proof. He needed answers. He knelt beside Mr. Whitaker's battered chest, pried it open, and rifled through the yellowed photographs and jewelry once more. The items, wedding rings stamped with tenant names, cufflinks engraved with initials, spoke of a sinister collector's mania, but they weren't the full story. At the chest's base, behind a false panel, Marcus discovered a weathered wooden lever carved into the floorboard. It wasn't visible on the camera footage. Whitaker must have concealed it carefully. Marcus pressed it, and part of the joist frame swung aside with a reluctant creak, revealing a narrow hatchway sloping down into darkness. A wave of cold fear raced up his spine. The landlord's secret archive extended far beyond simple theft. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow and dropped to his knees, shining his light down the hatch. A thin metal ladder led into a true underground chamber, a hidden room he'd never suspected existed beneath the attic. He tested the first rung. It was sturdy. Heart pounding, he began his descent, each rung echoing in that tight shaft until he dropped onto a dirt floor coated in decades of dust and the faintest sour tang of decay. He swept his beam across the chamber. Against the far wall stood a heavy steel cabinet sealed with thick padlocks, 3 locks, all brand new. To his left was a rack of wax-sealed mason jars, each labeled in Whitaker's neat script with dates and tenant initials. Marcus knelt before the jars and pried one open. Inside lay a brittle lock of hair, preserved with strange, formaldehyde-tinged fluid. Another jar contained a nail clipped from a tenant's filing fingernail. Yet another held a small biopsy of fabric, threadbare cloth from the pocket lining of a stolen coat. Shaking, Marcus realized this was no mere fetishist's hoard. It was a grotesque trophy case, chronicling intimate details of every tenant's body. The cabinet must contain something far worse. He edged toward the steel doors, which bore deep scratches and scuffs, signs of repeated opening. His flashlight beam landed on a scratched message carved into the concrete floor. I record, therefore I possess. With trembling fingers, Marcus fumbled the cabinet keys he'd filched from Whitaker's inner pocket, captured in the ring footage. The locks clicked open in succession. He pulled the doors free to reveal 3 shelves. The top lined with small glass vials of tenant blood samples, each tagged with medical dates. The middle stacked with meticulously cataloged eviction notices, spiked with handwritten warnings. Behind the bottom shelf cradling a single battered trunk whose clasp was secured by heavy-duty chains. Marcus unlatched the trunk, bracing himself. Inside lay an assortment of identifications, driver's licenses, passports, some expired, some pristine, each belonging to tenants who had mysteriously disappeared over the years. At the very bottom, he found a sealed evidence envelope marked MH Human Remains. His breath caught. The landlord, it seemed, had moved well beyond voyeurism into something far more sinister. Possibly even murder. The sound of creaking floorboards above jolted Marcus back to the present. He jammed the cabinet doors shut and dashed up the ladder as Whitaker's SUV headlights swiveled onto the driveway. Heart pounding, Marcus scaled the ladder, rebolted the attic latch, and sprinted to the front gate. Only once he hit the sidewalk did he dare to look back, where the glow of the porch light flickered over the ivy, hiding the tomb-like chamber below. Standing under the first stars of the night, phone clutched in his hand, Marcus realized that the landlord's secret archive was not only proof of theft, but the prelude to a far darker conspiracy. The recordings, the trophies, the grisly evidence, they demanded urgent action. He flicked on his phone's camera, recording the exterior of the house in one continuous take, and sent the footage, along with the ring video and photos of the attic jars, to the detective he'd found through overheard gossip at the precinct. The landlord's shocking secret now lay exposed in Marcus's inbox and in the hands of the police. And as he waited on the curb, breathing in the night air shaken by dread and resolve, Marcus Hayes understood that his home would never be safe again, unless justice descended swiftly upon number 213 Oakwood Drive. Marcus Hayes arrived at 213 Oakwood, just as dusk bled into night, the same locked door and ivy-clad porch greeting him with grim defiance. In his pocket, his phone buzzed with a steady stream of Ring camera alerts and police dispatch confirmations. Detective Alvarez had promised backup once Marcus forwarded the attic footage. Tonight, he would finally face Mr. Whitaker, uncover the full scope of his landlord's crimes, and reclaim his home. He knocked sharply on the door. Through the peephole, he saw Mr. Whitaker's familiar stare, pale eyes darting behind round spectacles, as though sizing up whether he recognized his tenant's determined gait. "Mr. Whitaker," Marcus said calmly, raising his voice so the ring mic would catch every syllable. "You have some explaining to do." The door swung open a crack. Whitaker, in a rumpled dress shirt and no tie, feigned surprise. "Marcus, good, evening. What can I do for you?" His voice wavered and he stepped aside to reveal the hallway beyond. Empty, lights dimmed. Marcus held up his phone and tapped the screen once. "I know what's in your attic. I've seen the jars, the photos, the remains, and I have it all on camera." He let the silence stretch, watching Whitaker's face blanch in the weak porch light. Whitaker swallowed and closed the door behind him with a soft click that echoed through the night. He led Marcus into the living room, where the air felt suddenly stifling. Marcus pointed his phone at the vacant floorboards. "Show me the secret door, Eric, or we can wait for the detective to arrive." The landlord's jaw tightened. He hesitated, then nodded curtly, his veneer of civility cracking. "Fine," he muttered. "Follow me." He guided Marcus to the dining room, its sturdy oak table lit by a single lamp. With a trembling hand, Whitaker flipped the concealed latch under the floorboard. The panel swung back, revealing the ladder to the attic. Marcus angled his phone upward and pressed record, capturing Whitaker's every strained expression. Whitaker climbed first, muttering, "It's not what you think." Marcus followed, phone light bobbing against exposed beams until they reached the hidden chest. Whitaker's hand hovered over the lid, as if reluctant to expose the evidence. "Open it," Marcus said quietly. His voice was steady, but his heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. Whitaker lifted the lid, revealing the twine-bound boxes. He nodded toward them, lips pale. "They're personal effects. Tenant property I've been storing for safekeeping." Marcus scrolled through the ring footage on his screen, showing Whitaker's face as he placed wedding rings and hair samples into jars. "Safekeeping?" Marcus's voice cut like glass. "You never asked permission. You never returned a single thing. You call this protection?" Whitaker's eyes darted to the steel cabinet door against the far wall. He inhaled sharply and moved toward it. "You don't understand the arrangements I've made." Marcus blocked his path. "I understand enough." He stepped forward, phone raised. "I saw the jars, the vials, the trunk marked MH, human remains. I saw the photographs of tenants, some of whom never moved out." Whitaker's defenses crumbled. He yanked open the cabinet doors, but the police burst in before he could retrieve anything. Detective Alvarez's voice rang out. "Hands in the air, Mr. Whitaker." Within seconds, 2 uniformed officers cuffed him. Marcus trained his camera on the scene. Whitaker's frantic protests, the officers dragging him away, the steel cabinet doors left swinging. Even as officers snapped on plastic evidence bags and secured the attic shaft, Marcus kept recording. Every jab of the flashlight, every whispered denial, every damning detail that the ring camera alone could not capture. When the last handcuff clicked, Whitaker slumped against the wall, pale and defeated, the weight of his hidden horrors finally laid bare. As officers guided Whitaker down the ladder, Marcus lowered his phone. The confrontation, recorded, time-stamped, undeniable, would be the final piece of evidence to send Whitaker to trial. Stepping back into his living room, Marcus exhaled, the lock sliding open with a single twist of his reclaimed key. Tonight he had not just opened a door, he had torn down a wall of secrecy and watched a predator unmasked under the unblinking eye of the camera. The morning after Detective Alvarez's squad arrested Eric Whitaker in the creaking attic chamber, Marcus Hayes awoke to a flurry of notifications on his phone. News outlets had picked up the surveillance footage he'd shared. The live stream of Whitaker sneaking inside, the jars of tenant keepsakes, the steel cabinet of identities, and the final brazenness of the human remains envelope. Within hours, platforms from local TV to national podcasts splashed his ring cam clips across screens, accompanied by headlines like "Landlord's Secret Trophy Room" and "Oakwood Drive's Chilling Discovery." Marcus tapped through the barrage of comments, some outraged, how many families were violated, some relieved he got what he deserved, and many expressing gratitude to the truth-telling tenant. He realized that, in exposing Whitaker's atrocities, he had become a reluctant hero. For renters everywhere, a symbol of the power of citizen surveillance and unflinching resolve. Yet as the world reacted, Marcus's own priority was singular: reclaim his home. By mid-morning, the district attorney's office had issued a statement. Charges of burglary, unlawful imprisonment, and desecration of personal property have been filed against Eric Whitaker. Bond is denied due to clear risk to former tenants. In a follow-up email, Marcus received confirmation from the civil court that his lease had been reinstated and that Whitaker's property management company would be placed into receivership pending full investigation. Finally, a court-appointed trustee would oversee necessary repairs and changes, ensuring the locks, cameras, and all security measures were once again under Marcus's control. Standing outside 213 Oakwood later that afternoon, Marcus watched as uniformed workers replaced the porch railing and rekeyed every lock with industrial-grade cylinders. Neighbors gathered respectfully at the curb, offering nods of sympathy and bouquets of flowers. The trustee, a stern but cordial woman named Ms. Levine, handed Marcus a new set of keys in a velvet pouch. "You have full authority over this property now," she said. "No one re-enters without your permission." As Marcus stepped through the threshold, sunlight flooded the foyer, illuminating motes of dust kicked up by the renovation crew. He breathed deeply, taking in the familiar layout. The arch of the living room doorway, the peg where his favorite hat always hung, the faint scent of coffee that lingered from last week's brew. For a moment, the house felt truly his again, untainted by secrets or violation. That evening, the local neighborhood association held an impromptu gathering on the front lawn of Oakwood Drive. Lanterns swung from the surrounding oak branches, and a potluck of casseroles, salads, and homemade pies stretched across picnic tables. Marcus accepted a plate of macaroni salad from Mrs. Alvarez next door and shared the story of how a simple doorbell camera and his own persistence had upended a darkness no one had suspected lived behind white picket fences. His voice shook with emotion as he thanked everyone for their support, reminding them that vigilance and community solidarity had made justice possible. In the quiet hours that followed, Marcus settled at his restored desk, opening a fresh notebook. He jotted down a plan to host a landlord-tenant safety seminar at the local community center, including demonstrations on smart cameras, encryption for video backups, and legal rights under tenancy law. He smiled as he wrote the final line: "No tenant should ever be locked out of both their home and their voice." As he closed his notebook and gazed across the now quiet living room, Marcus understood that the ordeal had changed him irrevocably. His home was back and more secure than before, but moreover, his story had sent ripples beyond his own front gate. Whispers of Whitaker's trial would echo in courtrooms and rental board hearings for months to come, a cautionary tale of how one person's decision to record the truth can free not just a single tenant, but an entire community from the shadows. And in that knowledge, Marcus found a profound peace, knowing that even in the darkest attic, light and justice could shine through.